to another exciting episode of Tuffy Talk here as we get back into another edition of Tuffy Talks Team Review here. And today we're going to be talking about the 2008 NC State football team. So this is just kind of give a recap here. This is O'Brien's second year at NC State. This is also the reason why I picked this game also too is this is the first year for Russell Wilson. So this is kind of the arrival of Russell Wilson. Kind of the idea behind this is probably what we'll do next is we'll do the 2014 football recap and just kind of do a little bit of back and forth here as we kind of go through the year. So that way it's not just so syncremental here per se. But again, you got myself, Layton Smith, and Greg Legg here to dive into this game.
Season.
You know, sorry, go ahead, Greg.
No, the season, not just a game. We're doing the full
Sorry.
season? Or...
Yeah, no, full season, baby.
Okay, I was like, all right, hold on. All right, cool.
We're just talking about the South Carolina game.
Yeah.
No.
Ugh, that'll be a 5-minute episode.
Yeah, pretty much. It was terrible. Moving on.
It was.
Yeah, no, and it was funny too. Before I kind of dive into it too, I was actually curious, and actually took a look at like Dana Bible, offensive coordinator, and then Mike Archer, defensive coordinator. Like, what did they do after NC State? And Dana Bible is actually interesting that he actually stopped coaching, and then he was offensive assistant for the 49ers in 2016. So he took like a 4-year break, and he did that for 1 year. And then in 2018, from 2018 to 2020, he was the quarterbacks coach at UCLA. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, man, so he just went back to the West and just stayed there. And then Mike Archer, after NC State, he was the safeties coach at Virginia. And then he was the associate head coach and linebackers coach in 2015. And I'm assuming that's when O'Brien, I think, was there. I think if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, no, he was at Virginia for a minute.
Yeah, and then he went to be the linebackers coach at the Toronto Argonauts, the Canadian Football League. And then he came back and was the Tampa Bay Vipers linebackers coach in 2020, which I'm assuming is the XFL. Yeah,
it was the XFL. They're now they moved. The franchise moved to like Las Vegas or somewhere out west. I don't remember whether it was like a 1-year wonder type thing.
Oh, I was gonna say because you're a Tampa Bay fan, so you should be a huge fan of Tampa Bay Vipers, right?
Yeah, I was excited because that was the XFL version, and then they had the USFL version of the Tampa Bay Bandits, which I remember growing up as a kid. But anyway, I digress. This is not a Tampa Bay episode. So
no,
but before we get too far, I'm kind of curious to see if the Bible thing was because I know he had leukemia for a while, so I don't know if that was during that treatment period where that he took that time off to kind of recover and get healthy. So
because he was diagnosed with acute. I don't even know that second word, but leukemia, big word, in 2009. Maybe that was kind of him stepping away because he was at State from 2007, 2012, and he didn't literally take a break ever since 1976 when he started as a GA at Cincinnati. Literally didn't stop coaching until then. So I can't necessarily blame him. So definitely. So hoping he's well. I haven't heard anything about him since, but hoping that since he just retired from coaching back in 2021, that hopefully he's doing all right here. But
and there was another guy on that staff who actually kind of found Russell. He ended up being the head coach for the Chicago Bears, and now I'm forgetting his name.
The one interesting which I found, which you'll like this, was so when I was looking at the famous Russell Wilson recruiting page, and most people know that he got only got offered by us and Duke. Do you know who the primary recruiter was for Russell Wilson at Duke?
Didn't he become like something to do with Carolina or something?
He's at the Patriots right now. He's the offensive coordinator for the Patriots.
Oh, it's not Josh McDaniels anymore. Who is it?
Bill O'Brien.
Oh, Bill O'Brien. Interesting. That's right. He did go back.
Yeah.
He did go back. Wait, no, wait. Bill O'Brien's back at the Patriots again?
Yeah, he's back at the Patriots. Okay. Yeah, as offensive coordinator. Yeah, he was offensive coordinator like years ago, and then now he's back again. So
yeah, because I know he was with Alabama, I think, last year.
He was. Yep.
Yeah.
So just a little interesting snippet there. But yeah, I actually did pull up our 2007 recruiting class. So the class that, in between that 2007, 2008 year. And some big names on there. The biggest, get from recruiting standpoint, was Jay Smith, who played
Virginia.
Virginia, Norfolk, Virginia.
Yep, Norfolk. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And then Antoine Holmes, which that did not bring any bells whatsoever.
Not at all.
Yeah, so not much there to talk about. But then some other names interesting. So George Bryan came in. Jeff Freshcamp, know him, defensive end. Jake Formiglio, a 4-year starter at State, offensive lineman, offensive tackle. Let's see, J.R. Sweezy, 2-star defensive end recruit.
Yeah, had some NFL time.
Yeah. Audie Cole, who actually came in as a dual threat quarterback. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah.
So he ended up being linebacker, was a 2-star dual threat quarterback.
And you said, I think Sweezy was on the defensive side, right? Came in as a
defensive end.
But remember, he was an offensive guy. You remember he gets converted to offensive line.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Oh, yeah.
But there's another theme on the team, and we'll probably talk about that here in a few minutes.
Well, again, the funny thing with J.R. Sweezy is that he didn't even get converted until he got to the NFL.
Right.
I mean, he was defensive tackle all the way through his time at State. So,
yep.
And then the only other 2 names that stand out of interest are Curtis Underwood, running back, who had some flashes, and then Owen Spencer, 2-star wide receiver. And we were
so fast.
Yeah, and the craziest part is, at least per this recruiting page, we were his only school of even interest. We were only one even looking at him. So, which is kind of crazy. So, yeah. So with that being said, but yeah, what do you want to talk about? Whatever narrative that you were mentioning at or alluding at right now, or
yeah. So yeah, no, I mean, yeah. So on that 2007 team, because of injuries and so on and so forth, we ended up with 2 defensive linemen that got converted to offensive line that year, and that was the great Ted Larson at center.
Nice.
Went on to have a nice NFL career.
Yeah.
And then left guard John Beddix, another defensive line guy that ended up becoming an offensive lineman just because of attrition and so on and so forth.
Yep. And also, too, I forgot Stephen Howard, wide receiver, who was a borderline starter for at least through 2010 or 11, if I'm not mistaken. So solid wide receiver for State. But, yep, so that is what fed into this class here for State. But it is funny how, to imagine Daniel Evans, Audie Cole, and Russell Wilson competing during camp that season at quarterback. That's crazy to think about, those 3 guys competing against each other, because all three are big names in most in-state football fans' eyes for different reasons. So,
and if we could circle back real quick, it was Mark Trestman that I was thinking about that was on the offensive staff that ended up becoming head coach of the Chicago Bears later on. And then here's your connection with Mike Archer. Trestman was the head coach of the Vipers when Archer was there as a defensive guy. So there you go. Full circle.
Kind of just a full loop. Yep, exactly.
Yep.
All right, so let's jump into this thing here. So, obviously starting off game 1, going to Columbia.
We just lost this one.
I know, right? 34-0. And I think, honestly, this was the game. I think the reason why you really kind of bring up or discuss this game is I think this was the game that was kind of the nail in the coffin a little bit for Daniel Evans. At some point early in the season, the torch got handed off to Russell Wilson, and especially for this game, going 4 for 12 for 37 yards, 2 interceptions, a 1.7 QBR. And then very quickly they started to switch back and forth between Russell Wilson and Harrison Beck. But the craziest part is they only threw 20 passes that game. Now, the star from the NC State side was Andre Brown, no shocker there, 21 rushes for 101 yards, but no touchdowns. And especially for a day 2 where literally South Carolina, their starting quarterback, Tommy Beecher, threw 4 straight interceptions, and we couldn't do anything with it. And then they brought in their backup, Chris Smelly, and the rest is history. So
so a couple of things there from my perspective for this game. One, this was a game where Nate Irving gets an interception. He ends up starting the season with three games of 3 straight interceptions, and we'll talk about the one of them in the Clemson game. Yeah. And then Russell Wilson ends up getting a concussion towards the end of this game, and so that kind of puts things in doubt, and that's why you see Harrison Beck with some mop-up duty numbers there in that game as well.
Yeah, mop-up duty is a very loose term, going 0 for 3 passing, but yes, mop-up duty, sure. But yeah, I mean, so really just a very, even though South Carolina had 34 points, not really much really on the offensive side for South Carolina even. The only other thing which I would say is Owen Spencer in his first game at NC State, an in-state uniform, caught 3 of the 5 completed passes for 27 yards. So yeah. So I mean, hey, that's good for him. So
yeah.
love to see that. But yeah, anyway, not really much to talk about there. Just disgusting. Unfortunately, Russell Wilson got that concussion, and then that kind of moves into our next game against William and Mary that we squeak by 34-24.
Yeah.
Now, kind of taking a look at it here, it looks like Daniel Evans did start the game, but once again, just poor performance. Yeah, 4 for 11 for 12 yards and an interception. A point.
At least he had 4 completions this game, right? We only had 5 the previous, so
I know. Yeah, and then he had a 0.2 QBR, which means he borderline would have been better just throwing 11 straight passes right into the ground.
I'm pretty sure you get 0.1 for just putting your name on the paper.
I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah, seriously though, but yeah, and because we also talked about Curtis Underwood, how he made an impact, and yeah, I mean he played a significant amount in this game, 9 rushes for 29 yards and a touchdown. But so backing up Andre Brown, 17 rushes for 43 yards and a touchdown. I'll tell you, and we don't really talk about Andre Brown much in terms of an all-time list or anything like that, but would you say he's in the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely probably top 5, top 6 in most statistical categories. This is a guy that had a cup of coffee in the NFL, and he probably would have had longer, except for he had some injuries.
Yeah.
And so I think he was just one of those sneaky under the radar. I think here's the other part too, is when you look at the overall success of the team during his years, this is a period of time during these 4 years where State doesn't have a lot of success, right? Mm-hmm. Because you have the Ted Brown era, right, when we were winning championships, and you have some of these other greats that the Phillip Rivers was probably the greatest 4-year history. Some of these others, Torrey Holt, same thing. We just didn't have that success with Andre Brown.
Yeah, no, it was just an unfortunate timing for him that he came in right at the back end in the rough years of the Chacamato era, and then the just trying to get their feet wet years with Tom O'Brien. So yeah, I agree. I think that if he had fallen into if he had been in instead of T.A. McClendon, for example, in the Phillip Rivers years, or if he'd come in, and been a replacement for Tony Baker or Jamel Eugene in the 2010-11 years, then I think it would have been a whole different story. I think stats would have been a lot better. I mean, you've been easily one of the top 5 running backs in state history, no doubt about it. I mean, because he was a big-time recruit, big-time get for NC State. So, so definitely unfortunate we couldn't take more advantage. And because, again, he was also a long-time starter. I mean, he started during the Chacamato years. He was very durable. And everything. Yeah, so unfortunate there. But yeah, the big story that came out of this though was Harrison Beck, who again was one of the backups, was 17 for 25, 246 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. And the other thing which I really liked as well is that this is now the second game in a row Owen Spencer was your leading receiver, 5 catches for 82 yards. So I mean, it's crazy that a 2-star, again, a guy only had 1 offer, and first 2 games of the season, bam. I mean, they're using him, and they're using him a lot, and he's effective. Yeah.
But this is also a game, again, we kind of buried it when we first said it. It's William and Mary. This is a game that you should have won by 2 or 3 touchdowns going away. It shouldn't have been a 10-point game. It's if Russell Wilson plays in this game, you probably have a different outcome. I think you're going to end up with a lot more points, as you can see as we go through the season. And then just how good Russell got as the season went on.
Yeah, I completely agree, and especially too, it's cool, and I think I one of the things which really stands out to me though is how involved the young guys were, specific on the offensive side. Again, I mean, George Bryan, freshman, Jarvis Williams, sophomore. Taylor Gentry, sophomore. So again, just a lot of involvement from young guys in this team. So
yeah, and that's something that it just makes sense, right? This is Tom O'Brien's second year. He's trying to build a culture. He's bringing guys in that fits his schemes with his coordinators. So you're going to see a pretty much an even mix of upperclassmen and freshmen and sophomores in the mix. And if you look at this roster, it definitely bears that out.
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, the only other thing which I'll say to this, which is kind of an interesting point, is that was actually William and Mary's first game, while that was our second game.
Yeah.
So interesting there. But yeah, so with that being said, moving on there from William and Mary and now into the ACC / real dirt, I think, of the schedule here, starting off against Clemson, going to Death Valley. And I believe Clemson was a top 25 team at this point, weren't they?
They were, yeah. They like 1921, somewhere in that neighborhood. But
that's what I think as well.
But it's interesting because at the end of the season, we're basically the same teams, like the record wise. Right. So it is interesting to see, in 2008 where Clemson was at compared to where they're at today, and that's only 12. It's only 15 years ago. So
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. It just, and because this is still before the Dabo era too.
Correct.
Right. So, yeah. So that's another interesting piece there too, as well. But yeah, I mean, you had alluded to earlier, so I'll let you kind of introduce this game and tell us how this game got started.
Yeah. Here's the thing too, like we'll get into, because when you start looking at some of these other losses, because this is, so the pattern of the beginning of the season, and maybe we'll just go ahead and talk about it, and then we'll get into the Clemson game. It's loss, win, losing 4 in a row, winning 4 in a row, and then losing the bowl game. So we didn't really talk about that at the beginning of the episode. So here we're going into the third game. Obviously, with that pattern I just said, we're going to end up losing this game. But this is a game where we should have won. We had, really good defensive play. I mentioned earlier, Nate Irving got an interception his first 3 games of the season, and he returns one back for a touchdown in this game. So it's where the defense kind of, is doing their thing. Russell Wilson comes back. This is his first start of his career. And it's on the road in Death Valley. But yeah, go ahead. I'll let you jump in with some other stuff.
Before we continue, I want to take a quick second to tell you about our sponsor, Flightlands Jessup Insurance Group, that has your whole world covered, with agents in 5 offices throughout eastern North Carolina to help you decide how much coverage you need. Offering policies for home and auto, recreational vehicles, commercial, crop, health, life, and employee benefits. They are able to combine options to find a comprehensive solution that works for you. Flightlands Jessup protects the things you love so you can spend less time worrying and more time enjoying them. Find them on Facebook and Instagram at Flightlands Jessup. You can also visit their webpage at www.flightlandsjessup.com. So please make sure to go and check them out. Yeah, well, and the interesting thing though too is that after Nate Irving picked it off and took it back for a touchdown, the extra point was actually blocked. Yep. So it's like, man, like it went from like a huge, like the ultimate tipping point of momentum to like, we're kind of back to center now, because they, even though it only kept 1 point off the board, it's like, wow, like, definitely getting 6 points instead of 7.
Yeah,
it hurts, but yeah.
And real quick, you mentioned the block kick. This is a year where we're actually replacing one of the NC State greats of kicking in Stephen Huska. So this is, we're breaking in. What's that?
Is that how it's said?
I don't know. Huska? I always screw it up. How do you say it? Huska?
I always say Hauska.
Hauska? Yeah, I'm not sure.
But
yeah, so this is a year where we're replacing, one of the top, 5 NC State kickers of all time. And but anyway, so just throwing that little tidbit in there.
Well, and this is a game too where I think from the Clemson side, the only guy that was really the guy at Clemson at this time was C.J. Spiller, their running back. And I mean, this guy was really involved in this game. 10 rushes for 61 yards, a touchdown, and then he caught 4 passes for 35 yards and caught a pass for a touchdown. So and again, I mean, he's a guy that, I mean, if you've been following ACC football long enough, that C.J. Spiller eventually is going to come to the table.
But this is a game too where we have a lead going into the fourth quarter, and we end up losing the lead. I think we go into the fourth quarter up 17-16, if memory serves me correctly.
No,
not this game,
because we lost 27-9.
Okay, never mind. I'm thinking a different game then. I'm thinking.
We literally didn't score another point. Let me see here. When did this field goal happen? With 1:01 left in the third quarter, we finally got a field goal to get it to 9. But yeah, definitely a rough day. And also too, a day that Russell Wilson got pulled actually on the last drive of the game, which, I mean, being down 27-9, I know it's late in the game, but it's not necessarily like garbage time per se, where you kind of throw in the backups. Like you still try and make a shot in my eyes, but I mean, he was 10 for 21 for 92 yards and an interception. They ran the ball 39 times. So like it definitely, and Russell Wilson ran it 13 times. Russell Wilson by himself was our second rusher, 13 rushing attempts to Andre Brown's 14 rushing attempts. So that kind of screams out to me that it's a quarterback that still maybe doesn't have his confidence passing wise.
Yeah, well, this is too where you're going to see, especially in the ECU game, the next game we talk about. This is a game where they were flipping Harrison Beck on third downs. So this is kind of to your point where they're not really trusting Russell with the full complement of the offense, especially on passing downs. And so that's why earlier in the season, you're seeing a lot more running rushes by Russell Wilson, right? As evident to, what you just pointed out.
Yeah, absolutely. Now it is kind of interesting here. TJ Graham a part of this team?
He was mostly, he was a freshman. He was mostly punt returning at this point. He wasn't really in the offense a lot.
See, the funny thing is that on the Rivals website, it has him as a part of the 2008, which maybe that makes sense.
Yeah, we're talking 2008. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we are talking to Luis. Yeah. See, I took 2008 classes like the next class, but yeah. If that's the case, then yeah, dude, then you got a whole bunch of names that are here, like Sherlin Lucas, CJ Wilson, Shea McKean.
Yeah. No, there was dudes on this team. Now they were just young dudes.
Yeah. Like you had Mike Glennon on. But see, I don't even remember seeing him on the bench. But yeah, okay,
he's there.
Brandon Barnes, that's another great one. TJ Graham, Mario Carter, Tobias Palmer, RJ Mattis, Dwayne Maddox. Man, yeah, there's a lot of dogs in that recruiting class.
But again, there's young dudes, and they, they're going to show up in like that 2010 season that we won't talk about right now. but those are your dudes of that season.
Yeah, well, because the only reason why I kind of was questioning that was because I saw in the punt returns it said Trevor Graham, and I'm like, who's Trevor Graham? I'm like,
it's TJ. Yeah,
okay,
yeah. No, we never called him Trevor Graham, right? It was always TJ.
Hey, who's TJ?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, who's Trevor? But yeah, cool. Yeah, no. So again, definitely, just it seemed like to me this is still like a game which show that we're just not. We don't have the dues right yet. We just have a really young team, which, again, I mean, you're not really going to have that anymore in today's day and age of college football. Right. I mean, unless you're, like a non-Power 5 and you can't really put your head into the transfer portal. But I mean, even still, then I would say you're probably not going to have this young of a squad. I mean, like the only guy who's even really senior that I'm seeing here is Andre Brown. Everybody else is like a freshman or sophomore.
Yeah. Yeah, so there was a lot of young dudes. Just looking it up, Clemson was 23 for this game. So that makes sense. I said 21, but they were actually 23. But they they will end up falling out of the polls at the end of the season, being 4-4 in the conference, just like us. They ended up 7-6. So obviously not going to be ranked. And by the way, this was a year where the ACC was not good. Like our best ranked team was 15th. And that was Virginia Tech finishing 10-4. So this was definitely, again, we said before the Clemson dominance. And even Florida State was only 21 in the country, finishing 9-4. Ironically, Boston College ends up winning the Atlantic Division this year.
The Atlantic Division. Yeah. No, I know. That's mind blowing. I agree.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And if Tom O'Brien had stayed there, he would have been the coach for them. So
true.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So now let's move on here and talk about my favorite game of the season, and that's against number 15 ECU coming to town. Skip Holtz coming to town, and it's funny, like when you talk about Skip Holtz, when it like with ECU people and things like that, because like on one end, I mean, like some of the best years in ECU's history were underneath Skip Holtz, but I mean, like, did he use ECU as a stepping stone?
Oh, 100%.
I mean, at the time, yes. Now it's funny. Now he's at Louisiana Tech, if I'm not mistaken.
Last time I checked. Yeah,
last time I checked, don't really keep up with him. So, but yeah, I mean, so it's just funny how things work that way. But yeah, so
it's easy to argue that ECU is in a much better conference than Louisiana Tech now, because remember he ended up going to, I believe, South Florida. And then South Florida and ECU are in the same conference. So how is that really even a stepping stone? I don't even know.
Well, and we played them actually next the game right after this, and at the time, South Florida was like a top 15 team. They were number 13 in the country.
Yeah, this was. I think this, if I'm not mistaken, this is the year they got to all the way to like number 2 in the country. Like they were.
This is the really weird year where like West Virginia loses to an unranked Pitt at home and loses an opportunity in national championship game. This was like
Ohio State. Yep.
The weirdest year in college football history, no doubt about it. So, but yeah, so taking a look at this game, like. It's funny because you see here that Russell Wilson. It's the same thing. Russell Wilson started the game, and then the second drive of the game, they brought in Harrison Beck on third down, throws a pick six, and then the rest of the way it's all Russell Wilson. And I think that I don't know if it was just like because from then on out, Russell Wilson started to look like Russell Wilson that we all know and love, and so I don't know if it's just the fact that. Like, Russell Wilson finally got like that seal of like, of trust and approval being like, like Russell, like it's all you now, you got this. Like, because I mean, it was a flip switch from then on out.
Yeah. I think some of it too, is they actually knew what they had in the other 2 quarterbacks. So they're like, well, if we're going to ride this out, we might as well ride it with our best chance, even though he's a freshman, he's going to make mistakes. He definitely gives us our best chance to win because you had the legs, right? And I think if nothing else, all things being equal, right? Because you assume they're both going to throw interceptions, right? Because you've already seen what you had. At least Russell gives you the chance to get out of bad plays with his legs. And
exactly,
you look at the season statistics and interceptions. Russell only throws one pick the whole year off of 17 touchdowns, whereas you had Beck and Evans combined for 12 interceptions. So right there, and Russell played in 11 games. The other 2 combined played in 10. So it's a no-brainer that he gives you your best chance to win ball games. So to your point, this is Russell Wilson's coming out party. This is his first career start at state at Carter Finley. And so it just the lights. This is what we, like you're saying. This is where we got our first glimpse of what Russell Wilson was going to be for NC State.
Absolutely. Well, especially too, I mean, like, his stats are great. 21 for 31, 210 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, like some great stats, and 12 for 26 rushing on top of it, a great
against the top 15 team in the country at the time.
Well, and especially too, I mean, ECU had one of the all-time, like probably depending on who you talk to at ECU, one of the maybe the top 5 players in ECU football history in Dwayne Harris. To beat, definitely that strong of a team, who went into this game 3-0, and also too, who was, I still remember to this day watching that clip on the ESPN where when the ECU team came running out, they were mocking doing the wolf hands and oh man, that was sweet. And I'll actually say this as well. This was actually one of the first games for me that I really started to buy in and be like that diehard NC State fan, and it was a good game to come to for sure. And because there's a lot of ECU fans there too.
You could hear them. I rewatched this game not too long ago, and you can definitely hear the ECU crowd at Carter Finley. I mean, we all know it's 75 miles separation, so that's a game where you're going to have a good showing by the other team's fan base.
Absolutely. 100%. So, so just to kind of talk about this a little bit more, I mean, I would say there's a couple of plays that really stand out to me. I would say, first of all, I think that first touchdown at the beginning of the second quarter, the pass to Andre Brown for a touchdown, because it was a great drive. I mean, Russell was 5 for 7 on this drive, capping off with a 4-yard pass to Andre Brown. So I think that was just kind of like a all right, we're in this thing, right? We're good now. We're good now.
Yep.
And then not really much more to talk about until this third quarter when Russell Wilson threw a touchdown to Jarvis Williams. And then one of my favorite moments was late in it was actually with 1 minute and 12 seconds left, and Russell Wilson drove all the way down the field and scored a touchdown to tie the game. And I still remember when they watching this back when they threw the pass to George Bryant, and the announcer went dropped, and everybody was like, no, he didn't drop that. Nope, he didn't drop that. And so
that was a nice catch.
It was a great catch for sure. And I think that was kind of maybe a little bit of a coming out party for George Bryant too.
Sure.
So, I mean, who again, I mean, for at least for me is probably number 3 best tight end in NCAA history.
Yeah,
so
I would definitely say that. This is also the first victory in the march to the mythical state championship that state can claim that year, right? So they beat ECU, and we'll talk about the other teams from the state of North Carolina that we end up playing and beating. But this is the first one that we got.
Which is kind of tough to, really hang your hat too much on that, just because, overall we weren't necessarily that great. But, we'll take what we can get, especially in O'Brien's only second year. Sure, we'll take it.
Yeah.
Beating ECU, UNC, and Duke. And
Wake Forest.
And Wake.
Yep.
Yeah, so we'll take it. But, I mean, and obviously capping it off there at the end, a great strip sack by Shea McKean, who I had mentioned earlier. To turn the ball over in overtime, and then first play of the game, Andre Brown goes touchdown. Right down and touchdown. Game over, stormed the field, and it was awesome. Great day for sure.
Yep.
So, with that being said, though, we'll take a pause right there. Here, as I know that at the beginning we obviously did a lot more conversating. We will continue through the rest of these 8 games here in the second half of this conversation here. So. From our end, if you wouldn't mind doing us a big favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you're notified on all your devices whenever we go live with any new Tuffy Talk / NC State content. And also, if you enjoyed this conversation, hit that like button and give us a follow. Tuffy Talk now on Twitter and Instagram. But with that being said, we'll see y'all for part 2. Go Pack, y'all.